to the Life and Listings podcast. I have Leanne here. Thanks for joining me today.
You are very welcome. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah. I want you to tell everybody that is listening that hasn't met you yet a little bit about yourself, what you're doing, what you're interested in.
Sure. So I'm Leanne Van Epps, and I am one of the co-founders of Lex Vivendi Solutions. We recently just brought on Lex Vivendi because we offer now a side offering or an alternative offering for nonprofits. And so I myself am an online business manager. So I assist businesses with their online operations, talking about leadership, how they're, if they want to scale their business, if they want to grow their business, helps the business owner decide on if they are prepared, like if they know how to delegate, if what items to delegate, because it's always a mixture of things of what to do. And a lot of people want to do all the things, and we know we can't do all the things.
Yeah.
So that's where I help out with. And then Marian Ward is my co-partner with Lex Vivendi, and she is the nonprofit specialist. She has 15 years of experience setting up nonprofits. And so what her role is to help somebody, if they have a great idea, to get that nonprofit started. She can either walk them through the process, or she can do it for them, with the exception of setting up the bank accounts for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
And then she has also 15 years of event planning, fundraising, and anything along the lines of getting the nonprofit off the ground. So that's where we don't necessarily, she obviously handles the nonprofit, but then when it comes to business side, I assist real estate agents. I can assist other small business owners. I have a history of 20 years in the mortgage industry, which I'm surprised this isn't grayer than it should be. And then what we do for fun as a family, we are very active, like to go on adventures. We all train Muay Thai. My husband is an amateur fighter. We're just always busy. In fact, my daughter's birthday is coming up this weekend, and we gave her the option to have a party or go on an adventure. And she chose going on an adventure. So
okay, I need to know what the adventure is.
So it's a two-part adventure. So we live near Portland, Oregon, where OMSI is. It's the Oregon Museum of Science, and I never remember what the I is, but it's a huge museum, the science museum. And so we gave her the option to go to a museum or the zoo. She chose the museum, but she doesn't know what museum. And then the next day we're going to go to the coast and spend the night and play in the pool and play on the beach. If it's nice, fingers crossed. But if it's not nice, we're still going to have a great time and just go on adventures.
Oh my gosh, that is the cutest thing. I feel like if I ask my kids, do you want to party or do you want to go on an adventure? They would totally be like, I need the bougiest party on the face here. My kids literally travel in the car with face masks on, the little eye.
That's amazing.
Absolutely ridiculous. I'm like, who am I raising? But then they also go out back and play with goats and stuff. So it's this happy medium. I'm super excited to have you on today. And there's so many different ways we could take this conversation. But I think the thing that stuck out to me, and I think also just because of the way the market we're in, right? Not just real estate, but businesses in general are dealing with AI. They're dealing with the real estate market the way it's at. That we're dealing with the election, all the different things that are going to happen and kind of change some of the ways that people are doing business, or changing the way that we planned on our business playing out over the next year or two. So one of the things that you kind of mentioned talking about is learning or preparing to be able to pivot with your business. And I thought that was a great topic today, because I think oftentimes we just, we're all building these businesses and we're just going 100 miles an hour and things happen, right? It's not just business, but it's personally too. So let's dig into that a little bit.
Sure. So any business, and like you mentioned, real estate, there's been a lot of things going on in the real estate world with lawsuits in the market as it is, the rates the way they are. There's so many different combining factors that go into place. And so it's not just I'm going to show you a house and you're going to sign the contract and you have your pre-approval letter and we're done. It's not like that anymore. So many different changes. And so with any business per se, you may have the end goal, but the road that you take there is not going to be a straight road. And so you have to dodge those hurdles. You have to look out for those roadblocks. And if it takes you off your path and you get back onto it, that's all that matters, right? That's the thing where the pivoting comes in. So for example, I had a client that we offboarded recently because she's growing and I was not able to offer my services to the capacity that she needs. And that's like, as much as it breaks my heart that she's offboarding, but it's like, yay, like
that's
exciting.
Awesome. Yeah.
Her business is growing. And that's the important thing from my perspective, is that that's happening. And so, it's a process for me, because I do take like some things to heart, because it's like you build those relationships and you want the person to do great. Then it's like when they're doing great, you're like, oh, now I'm sad. But, it's a happy sad, but it's the moving forward and looking for either the next client, talking to your current client load and see like what you can offer them. If you can upsell your current package, or even some other things that I've realized over the last year. I've been open officially since October of 22, so about a year and a half, is even just changing my pricing structure, package structure, offerings, because like there's some offerings that I realized that are not a good fit for me, and that might be something for every business owner, right? Like you go into your business thinking, I'm going to offer X, Y, and Z. You get into it and you're like, Z is draining. It's not my cup of tea.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So you remove Z, replace it with A, right? And Z might be your best seller, best item that you sell or offering or whatever, but if it drains you mentally and physically, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
And so that's where one of the things that I realized as I structured my business is I was offering social media creations, and I realized I would much rather spend 6 hours on a spreadsheet than create stuff for social media.
But it's almost like inner work too, right? Like understanding what's not only like in any business, right, where we're making money, but like what lights us up. Mm-hmm. So what you're saying is that you've got this goal that, you want to make $1 million. You thought you were going to get to $1 million by doing these buckets of things along the way. You start doing these buckets of things and you decide that's not lighting me up and I don't care for it. So you need to be prepared to change.
Yep.
So is that delegating it out? Like for you, was that delegating that out, or was that just cutting it from your services altogether?
It was delegating my personal social media and then cutting back, putting boundaries specifically on the creation of social media. So I may offer it to clients, but they have to have their branding colors. They have to have their font. They have to have a basic idea of what kind of content that they want.
Yeah.
Because for a short period, I was having clients like, here's the font and the colors, but you have free reign. It's like, then I would create something like, oh, but I don't like that. Okay, well, I need feedback. I need something. And I've also had clients that had absolutely nothing. I'd create something and they're like, well, we have this, and how about this? And it's like,
yeah, you're like, I'm not a branding, I'm not a branding person. So, too much time and effort. Yeah.
Yeah. So if the person has like the stepping stones, then I can build, the tower from the stepping stones, but I'm not going to create the stepping stones.
Yeah.
That's the part that's like,
well, and I like that you felt like you could set those boundaries, right? Like you identified it, because I feel like a lot of times with business too, like people just see the money part of it and they're like, but I'm charging people for it. I can do this thing. It's like, well, do I want to do that long term? Maybe it's not worth the money, or maybe you spending 6 hours on spreadsheets is going to in turn build your business better because you like it.
Yes.
I mean, there's that part of it. So a tip for our business owners that are listening, how can they prepare themselves to be able to pivot? Is it just identifying when they should pivot, or is there things they could be doing to prepare for it?
Well, so pivoting, I feel sometimes is a reactionary item from random things that we are completely unknown to us. Like we're making an action based off of a reaction. We have no control over it. I mean, you can be on top of all the things and you still have, like, you may have your hands full, but you still have that baseball come out your face. So what are you going to do? You're going to draw one thing and try to get the baseball. So I don't know if there's a plan, but it's good to pay attention to how you feel about things. And I use things very loosely because it could be whether it's you're pivoting family-wise, you're restructuring your schedule to make work with your family. This could be you're restructuring work so that we can take care of family. I mean, there's so many different things. So if you focus down on just the business part of pivoting, you need to look at your client load, your industry, what kind of contributing factors are affecting your industry, and how can you navigate to where you become an ideal source or attract your ideal client while doing those items. So real estate right now, with the way the rates are, maybe you're offering, I know sellers are offering like closing costs, and that's attractive to buyers because that helps out with, the buy downs and stuff like that. So like that's a pivot example.
Yeah.
Because that wasn't an offering just a couple of years ago. And so It just depends. And it's like you have to be fully aware and not just blindsided by the money. You have to be fully invested in your industry and know what's going on. You know, like I mentioned, like there's lawsuits going on. So that's going to be another pivot item, because people are going to have open communication about different things that they maybe didn't have about before.
Yep.
So it's just being knowledgeable and being aware and not just focused on the one end goal, because there's several end goals that have to be accomplished. Because one, you want to be known as an expert. Yeah, you want to make money. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But also you want repeat clients. You want referrals. So like those are kind of end goals all together rather than just the one making money.
Yeah. And I think you brought up a good point. Are you aware and are you educated on what's going on in your industry? Are you thinking about that? I mean, if we're talking about the lawsuits, I was shocked about how many agents didn't know about it. Like they were like, what is this? Does anyone want to add clarification on what just happened today? And I'm like, what? Are you living in a rock? Are you living under a rock? And I think that right there is going to help you prepare to pivot, because if you are educating yourselves and listening to people and you're listening to people talk and you're seeing what's kind of coming down the pipeline, you can pivot in whatever industry you're at because you know what's going to happen. Like for me specifically, I know how my work ebbs and flows. I know the real estate market. So I prepare every year. We get a little slower around Christmas time and way busier around February. I know that, right? I'm not shocked. I'm not shocked that like business got, a little bit slower. So, I mean, that's great. I mean, is there a way that you've pivoted your business over the years where you kind of felt like, other than social media, I think we talked about like you went from like charging one way to like putting it into a package. Was that a pivot for you?
It was, because initially when I very first started, and this is before I joined any coaching program or anything, I was just like, okay, it's going to be hourly packages. And it worked out fine. But then when I realized that I could basically value stack my packages, it turned out to be a better package for myself as the business owner. And then the client was able to be like, okay, we have these items. We're getting these items done in this time period. And it wasn't like I had to manually track my hours like I did originally. And so I'm glad I pivoted to that, to the value stacking rather than just the bucket of hours, because it was exhausting.
Yeah.
Trying to keep track of how many. And then I would cut myself short because I would be like, oh, this is only going to take 15 more minutes. And I don't want to charge them extra for 15 more minutes. When in reality, it took an extra hour, but I didn't let them know, kind of thing. So the value stacking was definitely a lot better. Another way I pivoted was by bringing Marian on. I had a couple people mention to me how they started a nonprofit and how draining it was because there was so many details that they didn't understand. And it just happened that Marian was available and I knew she had the experience. And then she's also been able to help me with some of my other client load. And so I've been able to use her on those different things. And so that's another, I guess, example of a pivot, because I heard people mention that they were struggling. And so I was like, well, I have a resource, so might as well bring this on as a valuable resource.
Yeah.
And see where I can take it from.
Yeah.
Take where.
You see the opportunities, right? You might not always be pivoting because you're running away from something, but you're pivoting because you see this opportunity, right? If I can get ahead of this over here, there might be more opportunity in my business or personal life, right? And we just talked about the pivot I've got to make over summer. Not really sure when this episode's coming out, but I lost my childcare, so I'm rearranging my workload and pivoting, right? Luckily, I have an amazing team, and so I'm just letting them all know I might be a little less available. There might be more little children in my video calls coming very, very quickly. So, okay, I'm going to pivot a little bit. We're going to pivot a little bit. You were in the mortgage industry before. You still are in real estate a little bit here and there. What is the funniest thing that's ever happened to you in real estate?
So I worked for this amazing company I worked for them for about 7 to 8 years. And this was, for those who know the real estate industry, this was back in 2002. I started with them in 2001. And due to the market layoffs and whatnot, I was laid off in late 2008. And so back in when the bad loans were being made... At the time, right, like they were very popular. So at the time, not knowing what happened in 2008, right, like we were making a lot of people happy because they were getting into their house and it was a lot of work. We had I had to share an office with another loan processor. We had files on the floor. I mean, I'm glad that it's 20 years long, because I don't think compliance rules are gonna
probably not.
Because they should have been locked and put away, and we locked the door and we left the office that night. But we just had stacks, and we were just busy, like constantly busy. And my boss at the time walked in one day. He had a half-gallon tequila, a bag of ice, and then he had this flower pot because we didn't have like a fridge or a cooler or anything. And so he had this flower pot. He threw the ice in there, threw the half-gallon tequila. He's like, I'm just really happy for you guys. Thank you for the hard work. I think that was our thank you for being in there because we would show up at 7:00 in the morning and stay till sometimes 7:00 at night just to try to get ahead.
Yeah.
And it was never ending up until, a couple of years later, but it was a totally random thing. And he's like, we can have margaritas later. And I'm like, okay. So
that's so funny that he would do. I think I actually recently offered the stats team something similar. No one took me up on it, but I was like, we had such a crazy week or a crazy day and we're all virtual. I was like, I am not kidding you. If you guys all go buy yourself a bottle of wine, I will Venmo you each reimbursement for you to go do that, because I don't know what happened, but it was just so insane. And I was like, just thank you. And no one took me up on it. I think everyone was tired. They're like, I'm not going to the store. But how funny for him to recognize, like, this is insane, so I'm going to do something insane back for you.
Yes.
So amazing. Well, okay, this has been a super fun podcast. Thanks so much for joining us. If anybody wants to reach out to you just to get to know you or see about your business, maybe they're trying to start a nonprofit, where should they reach out?
So Instagram is leanne.vanepps. That's my personal page. Instagram is also Lex Vivendi, and it's LEXVIVENDI.
Okay.
That's where you can find out the nonprofit information. My email is Leanne, LEIGHANN @leannevanepps.com.
Perfect. And I'll put all of that in the show notes too. So if you're watching on YouTube or you're listening on your favorite podcast app, it'll be all down below. And thanks for joining me, and hope to see you again soon. Enjoy your adventure this weekend.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.